There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamma Mia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 17th of April. I'm Holly Wainwright, back from a flying family visit to the UK.
Can't wait to see how jet lag plays out in today's episode, Holly Wainwright. I am Claire Murphy, filling in for Mia Friedman. I, of course, normally am the host of Mamma Mia's daily news podcast, The Quickie.
And I'm Vernem, filling in for Jessie Stevens today. I host The Spill over with Laura Brodnick on Mondays to Wednesdays.
And on the show today, it has been a rollercoaster week for women. Between an outcry about our safety and relief at a long-awaited verdict, where are we today? Also, are you obsessed with fairy smut?
Yes.
Millions and millions of women are. Just why we're deep in a certain sort of book right now. And what do you do with your rings after divorce? It's not only the rich and beautiful Emrata who's found profound new ways to wear them, but our outlouders too. But first...
Peggy and Ruby, look. Mommy's back.
Who's that? It's Molly.
In case you missed it, guys, Molly the Magpie's been reunited with Peggy the Staffy.
Woohoo!
Oh, God.
Yeah. Now, if you're not aware of this gorgeous relationship, there is an Insta-famous couple called Peggy the Staffy and Molly the Magpie. And Molly the Magpie was found by this family when it was just a baby, we don't know, fell out of its nest. But they raised it illegally because they do not have a wildlife permit or a permit to raise wildlife. But the beauty of it was that Peggy, their little Staffy, fell in love with Molly and vice versa. And the beauty of that Instagram account is looking at all their little adventures of Molly bouncing around their house on top of the Staffy and the Staffy like snuggling it and playing with it. And it's like, it's so super ridiculously cute. But as many, many people pointed out, there are some problems with this relationship. We mentioned no wildlife permit, but also we don't want to encourage people who also want to become Insta famous to go and snatch baby anythings from anywhere in order for it to have a gorgeous relationship with their domesticated pet. And of course, we don't want magpies to not fear dogs because whilst Peggy is lovely and they have a gorgeous relationship, if that baby magpie had the audacity to land in my backyard, the tiny psychopath that occupies the body of my dog would not allow it to exist any further. Mm-hmm. So there are problems there. It got pretty serious, and Desi, the Department of Environment in Queensland, made the family hand this magpie over, and it was a tragedy, and everyone was like, no, don't break them up. And there were like morning shows who interview the family, and they were like, the dog is now pining for its lost friend, and it was really sad. And they showed pictures of puppy dog eyes, and we were all like heartbroken. We needed this reunion. We needed them to come back together. And finally, they posted a video. Little Molly was brought home in a little pet carrier, and Peggy's there so excited and wagging her tail. And it's all just a beautiful reunion. But please don't steal magpies from the wild and make them friends with your dog.
God, everything is complicated, isn't it, right?
It really is. But I understand that you, Holly Wainwright, are probably more than most invested in this particular story.
Well before Molly was taken, I was one of the 827,000 people who follow Molly and Peggy on Instagram. And I know it's wrong, but it feels so right. And one of the reasons is I'm a massive Staffy fan. I've had Staffies, love Staffies. I know that lots of people are scared of Staffies, but I follow about 25 Staffy-specific accounts that are just like Staffies being adorable, Staffies being cute, Staffies being cuddly, because I'm like, yeah, they need a rebrand. And when I saw all this and I read the news story, and it's interesting to note that Desi have returned Molly to the family. They live on the Gold Coast in Queensland in the suburbs, with the proviso that they're not allowed to continue to commercially gain from this relationship, which is really interesting, right? Because they've got all these followers and they'd published a book, Penguin had given them a book deal of really cute, life-affirming, Staffy, Molly-related pictures. And they've said that's what's really wrong here. And I totally understand that. I get that it's wrong, but also I did shed a little tear when I saw Molly had got home.
It's a beautiful, beautiful
it's a
story.
bird. What do you mean? It is
a cute
wild
bird.
We see them all the time. They're in our backyard.
But not rolling on their tummies, waving their legs in the air next to a staffy dog.
God, I can't with this story. I don't even like.
At the end of the reunion video, it was all of them lying in the sun together. Like, it's so sweet.
And then what happens when that bird becomes lunch?
I know, darling. You're so right. I don't care. On the surface, it's hard to explain how this past few days, dominated by two enormous news events, should have left Australian women in particular feeling very emotional. But they have. Police are saying that a man did deliberately target women in his unprovoked attack in a Sydney shopping centre on the weekend when he managed to kill 6 and injure 12. And a different man, who's been in our consciousness for more than 5 years now, has finally been found by a judge to be a rapist. Now, both of these stories were covered thoroughly and I think with great sensitivity and expertise on Monday's Mamma Mia Out Loud. But here we are on Wednesday. 8 people are still in hospital from the attack in Sydney's Bondi Junction. Bruce Lehrmann is being pursued up the highway by paparazzi. And somehow these two stories have almost morphed together to leave Australian women feeling a really confusing mix of powerful emotions: sadness and grief, anger and relief. And that's why a video by Mia Finlay, who's a content creator on Instagram and TikTok, she's usually an eating disorder and body image advocate, but in the past 24 hours, a poem that she wrote and has read is in all of my group chats, in the Out Louders feed, DM'd to me, and is going viral. Here's a little bit of it.
You tell us be cautious and we've tried it all. That I'm in a cab message, that I'm home safe call. We cover open drinks of girls we don't know, cross streets and fake phone calls so we'll be left alone. We stay home with our partners because surely we're safe, but where nobody's looking, one of us dies every 5 days. All of a sudden we care when it blows up in our face. A knifeman in Bondi, a terrorist in a cafe. What do they have to do with our country's great shame? Because the core of their crimes were both one and the same. He had a problem with women, the knifeman's father said. He targeted women until a woman shot him dead.
Now, for very good reason, many people are saying that the Bondi tragedy is not about men and women. They're pointing out that men tried to fend off the attacker and that men saved the life of Ashgood's baby Harriet, who is, as we record this, thankfully out of ICU. But in examining what we can or should take away from this week, women are telling us two big things. They're telling us that they're feeling deeply fed up and distressed about never feeling safe anywhere. And also they're telling us that they do understand the complexity of the attack in Bondi Junction, that there are lots of people in their lives who live with complex mental health conditions that they're seeing this week being blamed with broad strokes for this terror and loss. Claire Murphy, after 4 days of very intense reporting on these two unrelated stories that have affected us all so deeply, what are you hearing about where we are?
I think a lot of the focus has turned to who we can put our faith in and who we can trust. And that seems to be the strong women who have come to the fore in these stories. So I was just reading today, for example, praise for Lisa Wilkinson, who without her decision to not have Network 10's lawyers represent her in court, for her to go and seek her own counsel, it meant that case went to trial, because had she not done that, Network 10 probably would have settled with Bruce Lehrmann the same way that the ABC and others did. So due to the convictions of Lisa Wilkinson and her belief in Brittany Higgins, we got the result that we got this week. And I know that people are saying it's not a criminal result, he's not in jail, so it doesn't feel the same, doesn't hit the same. But when you talk about these cases that are always so complex and he said, she said, to hear a trauma-informed response from a judge who understands what it means not to be the perfect victim, and knowing that without Lisa Wilkinson's foresight and ability to stand tall in the face of what I imagine was immense pressure to not do so, we got a result.
That's interesting, because also I think the mood that we're hearing so much is this kind of helplessness that women are feeling, right? And their anger. And we know that these stories aren't related, right? Of course they're not. It would be flippant to sort of include this awful event in Bondi. But women kind of are, because not all of us can be Lisa Wilkinson. Do you know what I mean? With the financial resources and the status and all those things to push this as hard as they can. Obviously, not all of us clearly can be a police officer with a gun who can take down a man who's targeting women in horrendous circumstances. But we're kind of looking for hope and positivity in the idea that, maybe, I don't know, it's really interesting how these stories have kind of merged into this feeling of like, we are so done. We are so done with feeling like this.
You mentioned that discussion about mental health in that as well. And I know a lot of people have been reaching out, and they have to me via DMs too after Monday's show, that we have to take into account that this man was suffering from a mental health issue, had since he was a teenager. But also there was a lot of people who understand that mental health alone is not behind this. Because had mental health alone been the reason, we would see people with schizophrenia doing things like this every day. And yes, there are people who live with the threat of someone in their life with this illness doing these things. And I interviewed a man who suffers from it quite a few years ago, and he tried to convey to me that break from reality that people with this illness have, and they cannot grasp what is real and what is not anymore. And it's a terrifying place to be for them and for those around them. But we have to factor in that this man did have a problem with women, and that didn't come from having schizophrenia. That comes from a society, a patriarchal society that teaches men that women are less, that allowed him to formulate in his mind, in whatever state it might have been at the time, to go into that shopping centre and target women and babies. Like, that's more than mental health. Mental health is a player, yes, understandably, and very terrifying, but it's not the only factor, and we need to address that. And that is the thing we can't get right, because Chris Minns, the Premier of New South Wales, is now saying we'll address knife crime and we'll make the penalties for knife crimes or wielding or possessing a knife stronger, which is great. We need that. But it won't stop a society that tells men they own women, that we're nothing more than an expendable resource for them. Like, how do we change that? And I feel like that is the most aggravating thing, because there's no answer unless it's like some major societal shift, which feels beyond us.
Well, to be honest, we're in the middle of a major societal shift. They don't happen overnight. They happen over generations. It really isn't that long ago when it was legal for men to hit their wives and rape their wives, and that's now certainly not. So I would argue that a hopeful read is that shift is underway. When it comes to this man, we want to talk a little bit just about the mental health issue, but also all the sort of assumptions and stereotypes and easy reads that we jump to about that. I want to just explain to people a little bit about why, for example, on Out Loud right now, we're not naming him.
Yeah.
So you'll see that some media are really fixating on him, details of his life and details of his mental health condition, his family, his background. And I understand why, and we all understand why. But actually, it's not just symbolic. It's not like a decision to focus on the victims rather than the killer as just symbolism. But it's actually often best practice too, because data from places where these kind of attacks are much more common, like the US, for example, say that focusing very much on the who's and why's and where's of the perpetrator actually encourage copycats, right? So that actually not focusing too much on those details is better for us all in general. But also, and we've mentioned this, but our audience is saying to us that just sort of this broad stroke of a madman, and talking about him as a mental health condition is also really damaging to people who live with mental health conditions. Our audience would be very familiar with Elfie Scott. She used to work at Mamma Mia, and she's written a brilliant piece that's in Crikey today that we'll link to. She has a lot of experience about writing about complex mental health conditions. She's written a book that is about her mother who has schizophrenia. Mia interviewed her about that for an episode of No Filter. On this point, she wrote about how we've been primed by movies and TV and lots of media to believe that schizophrenia, which is a mental health condition that is characterized by delusions and hallucinations, is a big risk factor for violence. And actually, the stats show that that's largely untrue. And that saying that over and over again is stigmatizing for people living with complex mental health conditions in a very real way. She said, for example, people who have schizophrenia might be afraid to call for an ambulance because they're worried about what people might think of them when the way they'll be treated by a hospital when it's clear what their mental health condition is.
But also, too, we've seen people with schizophrenia lose their lives when they're confronted by police, for example, in a situation who don't understand their mental health situation. Like, they've literally been killed because of it.
and that the stigma involved in this can actually stop people from reaching out for the help that they need. So that's something to really bear in mind when you're hearing this reporting. What did you think, Em, about that kind of profiling?
Similar to what you said before, when it comes to assumption, that is such a dangerous place that people kind of hover in before information comes out. We're in like the era of social media where we saw what happened in Bondi before we were told what was happening in Bondi. We saw it with our own eyes. We saw what he looked like. We saw the victims. And the amount of relief I felt, which is so shitty to say, but the amount of relief I felt when I found out he was a white man was enormous. I really had to look into why I felt that. And it's mainly because before we knew who he was, like I would see photos of him. I saw videos. He was a man who had like dark facial hair. And I was like, this is going to absolutely spiral. And it's going to be people looking at people who look like me for answers to explain why someone who looks like me has done something like this. There was going to be calls of like immigration laws. Like I could just see the headlines happening. I think this is where I struggle with a lot of people using mental illness as the full excuse of why he did this. Because if it was a brown man, even if he also had schizophrenia and he carried out this act, mental illness wouldn't even come into the picture. It could be the technical definition that they have to use, but the social definition would be this was an act of terrorism. The bad thing about that is that because he was a white man who carried out this act of violence, it allows us to actually look into the mental health system for what it is and talk about schizophrenia in this way, because I don't think we would have talked about mental illness in this kind of way if it was a brown person. It's so sad because when I first saw tweets of all of this happening, the amount of racist commentary I saw on Twitter was so scary. I was so close to taking a day off work because I was like, oh, if I have to talk about this, it's just going to snowball and spiral and I have to kind of talk on behalf of a whole group of people, which I don't want to do and I don't want to put words in other people's mouths. But I was so relieved to see he was white because it made me feel like, okay, I don't have to answer for this man's actions. But what was even more disappointing was like when it was relieved he was white, all of those racist tweets were just deleted and no one said anything about it. Like we just pretended it didn't happen. I want to be clear that I am definitely not happy that it was a white man who did this crime. I just want to kind of reflect how I felt as a woman of color, as well as my family and friends who are people of color in that moment when it was relieved that it was him who did it.
It's so interesting because the thing is that, as you said at the beginning of that, we were already making all our assumptions before we knew what was happening. And I will freely admit that I was on the other side of the world, as Out Louders would know, and we had the radio on and the BBC were covering it in lots of detail, and I was obviously on my phone looking for it. And I have to admit, I wanted to know what he looked like very quickly, right? And what was I scanning for, right? I was scanning for profiling a place where I could put this man in a box, right? Yeah. And terrorism was obviously a question that does need to be answered straight away, and it does have different implications if it's an act of terrorism, because you can see an escalation there. Is this beginning of a campaign? Is this taking us back to a place that we were several years ago? But also I was scanning for other things, which I'm not proud to admit, class clues. Like, would this have read differently if that was a man in a suit? It wouldn't have been any less horrible. I'm not suggesting that for a second, but would the box I put him in be different than if he's a man in a football shirt? Like, am I scanning age-wise? Am I scanning, does he look like, in inverted commas, a crazy person? Like, these are all the things we're doing.
You also want to eliminate whether you know that person or not, right?
That, of course. And I think that, we're not proud of it, but that's what we all do in these instances.
Yeah.
I also think as women, we are very used to profiling men in particular to assess risk all the time. It's something we do whether it's conscious or unconscious. I don't know about you walking down the street. I will look at a man and kind of assess him for risk using all of those things you just described, rightly or wrongly. And, it's judging a book by its cover. But I feel like in the climate that we exist in, you kind of have to. It's a self-preservation thing to rule him in or out as a risk.
I know, but we also know in our right minds that like people from all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of social backgrounds and ethnicities commit acts of violence, right? And that actually white men in Australia are more likely to commit it than anybody else.
Yeah, there's a reason why white supremacy is known as one of the biggest terror threats globally. Right.
Yeah, but we do it. We scan and we make our assumptions, and it's some kind of self-preservation, but it's also deeply problematic because what we're scanning for is not necessarily telltale.
And I think it's also important to recognize that some assumptions will also trump others. Like there are certain things, like I think about this all the time, just being a woman of color. Like I can dress how I want to dress. I can probably get like my face altered. I can wear so much makeup. But the one thing I can't change is the color of my skin. And I know that that assumption will always trump my other assumptions of me. And I think that's what I was most terrified of in this whole situation.
And the point that you made about feeling that if this man had been a man of colour, that somehow you would have to answer for that is just a really difficult but very important thing for us to hear. I want to just say that the important point about this, though, right, is that human nature is human nature. As you say, right, Claire Murphy, that scanning is often one of our means of self-preservation. But what the media shouldn't be doing is that, right? So you can't control what people are saying on Twitter. But when we go there for our information, because we've got to void until we get the responsible reporting out, which is entirely understandable because it takes a while to piece together events.
It's also unfortunate that Twitter is still the place to go for breaking news because people post their unfiltered experiences. So it's unfortunate that it's a good primary source for when something is unfolding, but you have to read that with it in the back of your mind. We don't know the facts. We don't understand what this means. You're just seeing images and piecing it together yourself.
Exactly. And to be aware that that's not the truth when you're there. You know, there's a reason why the way that this has been reported in a lot of media has been quite restrained, has been not focusing on an enormous amount of detail, has been dealing very sensitively and rightly so, because the other thing that happened is immediately everybody's sharing images taken from victims' social media sites. And then a few hours later, the family are saying, actually, we would really rather you didn't do that. And everybody's like, oh, oops, and pulling them back. I don't want us to feel bad about that. This is the world we live in, but our demand for instant answers, instant information, instant solutions, hot takes within minutes, we really need to look at that sometimes and not encourage jumping to the quickest conclusions. Having said all that, I think like it is a really weird week. It is like a strange clashing of stories that kind of affect women and how we feel about our safety and our bodies and our lives. And I just feel for all of us. I do. But no one more so, of course, than those directly affected still by these terrible events.
Ladies, how do you feel about a little bit of fairy smut?
It's all a certain type of woman in my world is talking about, Murphy, and I don't understand it.
I don't even understand that word.
What is fairy smut?
So if you have not come across this book series, and to be fair, if you work in the Mamma Mia office, you can't not have, because Nicole, who works with us, has literally been shouting it from the rooftops for weeks and weeks. This is a book series which kicked off with a book called A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's written by Sarah J. Maas, and she is the reigning queen of a genre known as romantasy, which we are referring to as fairy smut.
Romantasy. I love it.
Romantasy. So she has 3 series on the go, the Throne of Glass series and the Crescent City series, but we're focusing in on the Court of Thorns and Roses series. And you'll be happy to know just in a minute, I'm going to read you a little excerpt from book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury. Now, if you are not across this, it's kind of like Game of Thrones, but the players in it aren't human. They're fae folk, so they have various powers. There are different courts. There are high lords and their subjects. There are kings and queens. And I can see producer Em with a smirk on her face because she's like, I don't understand what you're talking about.
It sounds like something I would never read, and yet this woman is selling books faster than they can print books. So Murphy, cut to the chase. Why is that?
So, okay, just to give you some perspective, she has sold more more than 38 million books worldwide.
Cannot express to you. I want you all to know that the average fiction book in Australia sells less than 5,000 copies. So that will give you
Some perspective.
some idea of like what we're talking about here.
Hull, I think you need to change gears and get
Oh
into
my
the
God.
smut
If you got
game.
into fairy smut, mate, you have no idea where your fortunes would go.
Oh my God.
But like the London-based publisher of these book series, Bloomsbury, they say their profits have risen like 11% thanks to the romantasy genre alone. They're raking in like a £17.7 million over a 6-month period from this genre. In Australian dollars, that's about 34.3 million.
Is it all because the fairies are having sex, Murphy?
It is because the fairies are having sex, but it's not just about that. So these books are written from a female gaze. And I don't say that as in they are feminist, because they are not. Okay?
Oh.
So sometimes it's because the sex isn't all about the man getting the gratification. A lot of the times it's about the woman being satisfied and the man saying, no, that's enough for me to have just satisfied you. So, yeah,
We
right?
love that.
Right?
Like, how much sex is in these books, Claire? Is it like every 10 pages? Is it just like a couple of times during the book? Like,
It's about building the suspense around it. It's about how the man woos the woman, how he learns her and understands her and literally gets inside her head. But it is about the chase, about a man really chasing a woman without being a stalker, respecting her boundaries, understanding when not to push too far, understanding when to allow her space, understanding giving her space to grow. Like, it's just all the things that you wish a man would do, but also sometimes, and brace yourselves, sometimes you also want him just to get down and dirty and grab a handful of hair in the bedroom. Like, it's just, you need that part too sometimes, right?
so what you're telling me is that the fairies are getting this shit right that the humans can't get right. Is that what you're telling us? So I do want you to read us a little bit, because I can't express, so many people are telling me about these books and to read these books and to write books like this, which I'm not suggesting is easy in even a hot minute. But people are saying, you need to put more sex in your books. Everybody needs to put more sex in your books because women are horny for it. I want you to give me an example of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's listened to Out Loud before and heard me on here, you'd know I'm a big fan of smut books. I'm not a big fan of like fantasy books. So if there was no smut in there, like I probably wouldn't read it.
I love it. Romantasy
Just
is
here
just
for the
code
sex.
for romantasmut.
Romantasmut, right? So if you are not onto book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury, I'd suggest maybe just plugging your ears for the next like just couple of minutes, because I'm just going to
Spoilers.
read.
Sexy
There is
spoilers.
a sexy spoiler alert coming. Are you prepared, ladies? Are you
I'm so
ready for
ready.
this?
My body
Are
is
we going to have
ready.
to put a warning on this episode?
Yeah, we are. Sex
Please
is
read.
incoming. I read from real books with paper, not Kindle, so you're going to hear some page turning.
Okay,
Just
so if
hop-
there are kids, if you've got your kids in the car, guys, give us a moment.
Yep. Okay.
Go on.
Here we go. At the risk of sounding like the podcast, My Dad Wrote a Porno. Here we go. Something hard pushed against my behind. Heat flooded me.
Heat!
And I went taut and loose all at once. I stroked his wing again. Yes,
Is wing a
wing.
euphemism for something? Okay.
No, they're fairies, remember?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
He's not a fairy, but he's fae-folk. Get it right. 2 fingers now, and he twitched against my backside in time with the caress. The fingers he'd spread over my
Confused
stomach
about
began
this
to...
position that they're in.
Just go with it.
Sorry.
The fingers he'd spread over my stomach began to make idle, lazy strokes. He swirled one around my navel, and I inched imperceptibly closer, grinding up against him, arching a bit more to give that other hand access to my breasts. Greedy, he murmured, his lips hovering over my neck.
Cringe.
First you terrorise me with your cold hands, now you want... What is it you want, Feyre? More, I almost begged him as his fingers travelled down the slope of my breasts, while his other hand continued its idle stroking along my stomach, my abdomen slowly, so slowly heading toward the low band of my pants, and the building ache beneath it.
This is some classy writing.
Oh my
Can I
God.
tell you that as someone who has written a few sex scenes in my time, not lots, but some, there is some sex
You've
in
written
some
some
of my
pretty sexy stuff.
Well, I remember Claire Stevens saying to me, how can you write that? Don't you think your mum might read them? I was like, I'm pretty sure my mum's had sex before. But anyway, it's really hard to think of lots of new words for describing these sensations.
Are you writing notes down?
I am. Like, it's hard to go past the really cliched stuff too, but actually you don't necessarily have to, as these books are telling us, because it works, right?
I think also because every time I read sexy scenes in books, all the really sexy stuff has always been written by men trying to portray what a woman's feeling.
And
it's
you
like,
cannot 100% tell the difference between a man-written sex scene and
her
a woman.
perky boobs like porcelain.
Yeah.
And she's dripping from her nether regions just looking at him. I'm like, what? No one does that.
It's so true. I find it really fascinating that this stuff is having such a moment because obviously the obvious comparison to a time when women became entirely obsessed with smutty books for a bit was the 50 Shades series. Now, I was pregnant with my second child, I think, when some of those books were out. And I read them all. This is not a newsflash for anyone. They are not very good. And the sex in them is very problematic. You know, he is a controlling billionaire enslaving this young woman.
But did it make you horny?
I fucking loved those books. Like, I hated them and loved them at the same time. And it's interesting because at the time, and without wanting to share too many details of my personal life, it's not like I wanted to have hot sex. Like, I was heavily pregnant and feeling, but I wonder if one of the reasons why the female smut genre is having such a moment, because I don't know whether the demo here is younger or older or whatever, but is maybe because a lot of like IRL sex feels kind of complex, problematic, a bit worried. We're reading lots of stats about how Gen Z, which is your lot, are not actually having as much IRL sex as generations before. So does book sex feel safer?
I think it feels more optimistic than safer. I remember reading 50 Shades of Grey when I was 16 because it was a huge, one of the girls in school had a PDF on her computer. So because we weren't allowed to read the actual book.
Oh my
we were
God,
just
you're so
passing
naughty.
around. We were just passing around the PDF. It was so fun. But this kind of writing makes, I think, us feel more optimistic that women collectively know that sex in real life needs to be better because right now it's not. And we've also are the generation that were kind of on the end cycle of magazines, and all the magazines were still very much like how to pleasure your man, how to keep him like keen, how to make him stay. So we initially approached sex with trying to pleasure one person in the bedroom, and it wasn't us. And I think having these smut novels that are aimed for women shows that women of all ages recognize that that is a problem, and this is our like little outlet out of it.
And also maybe because we know that that generation of men have been brought up on porn in a way that, I mean, you know, porn's been around forever, but there's no question that now porn is much more prolific. And so this is like the antithesis of male-focused porn obsession.
Yeah, arguably women should not be reading these books. Men should be reading these books and learning a thing
Is
or
all
two.
the sex in it straight, though? Because this is very heteronormative. Is all the sex in fairy world about men and women?
It is not. There is also queer fairy folk or fae folk. They haven't delved too much into one particular character's sexy storyline yet, but we understand there are also bisexual fae folk who don't mind either way. So, yeah, there's definitely a spectrum of sexual encounters across they call them ACOR. I don't know the slang for this series of books, but A Court of Thorn and Roses books, yeah.
Out loud, as if you're obsessed, we want you to tell us why, because it is something that so many women I know are obsessed with. And a lot of people who are cynical about it then read one and they're like, oh my God. It reminds me of when Outlander was massive, that TV show.
Yeah, it's pure lady porn.
Yeah, and that was lady porn too, because that was also sex from a female perspective. Like this big hot dude in a kilt was a very traditional kind of hero. But it was all shot from this female perspective and the sex was from a female perspective. And we all just went, oh my God, we're allowed to feel that way?
Yeah. Also, too, I feel like if you read books like this or if you watch things like Outlander, I feel like the men in your life, if you are in a heteronormative relationship, the men in your life will benefit. They won't know why. They won't understand why all of a sudden you're really horny and that you're like really into it. It's because she's replaying fae folk sex in her brain whilst she's doing it with you. So just know that for a fact. If you are still not convinced that the ACOTAR, that is the acronym for A Court of Thorns and Roses book series, is for you, we asked some of our colleagues in the Mamma Mia office who have read them to give their feedback, and I think they might win you over.
And I mean, what's not to like? There's sexy men who are really good at sexy things. They're always really rich. You don't have to work. You can just sit around all day and shop and paint. I mean, honestly, that's a better fantasy than the actual sexy parts.
So never in my life have I been a reader. I don't even think I've finished 5 books in my entire life. But I just finished all 5 books of this series. And I think the thing that Sarah J. Maas nails is that the tension she builds in every book, you don't think you're going to fall for it, but you do. And then she just gives you this lovely moment of romantic release, but also mixed in with this like action and adventure. I don't know what magic she's woven into these pages, but like if it came out tomorrow that she's a wizard or a fairy, I would genuinely believe it. They're just so good.
Okay, so obviously I love ACOTAR. You've got to get to the 5th book for the really racy, saucy stuff. 4th Wing and then a follow-up Iron Flame both have some nice, like, smouldery, juicy scenes. Do I want to be personally... Probably not. But do I want to read about it? Indeed I do.
Want unlimited Out Loud access? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamma Mia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week. And a huge thank you to all our current subscribers.
Our good friend, Emrata, has started a new trend. It is called divorce rings. So following the divorce from producer and actor Sebastian Bear McLeod, who she shares a son with, she posted to Instagram showing how she turned her big engagement ring into 2 separate rings, coining the term. She then told Vogue, "The rings represent my own personal evolution. I don't think a woman should be stripped of her diamonds just because she's losing a man."
Diamonds, as if we've all got loads of diamonds.
So
I love it. When you look
relatable.
at the picture too and you split hers in half, both of hers are bigger than my one engagement ring.
Obviously, just for Outlouders who may not be familiar with one of our favourite celebrities to discuss on this show, Emrata is, of course, supermodel. Yeah, supermodel and notable feminist author. I'm just throwing that in because it would really irritate me. Yeah.
She further explained the decision through her TikTok.
And the main reason that I'm sharing that I did this is because I have seen so many comments that associate divorce with failure and with shame. And both personally and politically, I fundamentally disagree with that. I think historically the shame around divorce is at least partly what has kept women in unfair, unhappy, and even sometimes abusive marriages. Finding the resources and strength to leave a relationship is often a very brave and remarkable act. And I'm not trying to make the point that everyone needs to make a divorce ring or turn their wedding dress into a mini dress, whatever symbolic gesture for evolution. But I do think that single moms and women who are starting over for the first time in a terrifying way should find solace in the fact that they're not failures for leaving.
So, Claire Murphy, you are married.
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Am I the only married person in
You
the
are.
room?
You're the
I
only
am.
married person
You
on the
are.
show today.
Okay.
Who does the diamond belong to after a divorce?
If there's a diamond to start
If
with.
there is a diamond to
or
start
the
with.
wedding band.
Yeah.
The rings. Let's just call it the rings.
The rings.
So here's my perspective on this. If we lived in a perfect world where we had gender equality and we got paid the same as men for doing the same jobs and we populated, 50% of the boards of major ASX companies and we, didn't lose out on super when we go and have babies and all of the other various ways in which we are financially at a disadvantage, I feel like if we lived in that perfect world, we could absolutely split the asset that is the rings. But we don't live in that society. So I feel like the ring goes to the woman, not only for that purpose, but also because she has more than likely, which has been proven over and over again, she probably washed his clothes, cleaned his house, raised his children, organised his life admin.
It's payment.
And is payment for the time served in the presence of her husband. So I feel like the diamond belongs to the person who earned it, and she did.
Well, and also, let's be real, like he has a ring too most of the time,
He does,
right?
yeah.
So like a wedding ring, and no one's questioning who that belongs to. Like, I think the ring is yours if you got given it, right? It's a gift.
If it's a
and
family
therefore it's
heirloom,
yours.
maybe different. If it comes from his side of the family, maybe different because you're taking it from a woman potentially in his family. Like I get that pathway, but if it is not an heirloom, I feel like it is a gift to you. It is yours to keep. And if you need that as a resource, like if it is worth a fair chunk of money, that could go towards paying off a debt. It could go towards setting you up in a new house. It could, like, who knows how that could benefit you down the track.
100%. But in this example, and I know Emrata is not representative of us all, but her thing of the divorce ring is that it should still give you joy. It can be a symbol of empowerment, right? And I know a lot of ordinary, in inverted commas, not that I'm suggesting that we're not all extraordinary in our own way, women who have had to make this decision about what to do with their wedding rings.
Yeah.
Who have also refashioned them into other things, like not massive diamond rings like Emrata because they weren't that big to start with, but maybe a necklace, maybe a symbolic bangle, maybe a whatever. But it's also jewellery that's infused with sentiment. So, you asked like Mamma Mia audience what they'd done with their rings, right?
Because-
And did they have some interesting stories?
So many interesting stories. I am such a perv with all of these things as someone who's never been through a divorce. So I got around 70 responses of women telling me what they did with their rings after a divorce. And they were all so different. Some of them saw it as bad juju. So they were like, either throw it in the sea, literally throw it in the sea, or they just have it in a box in their closet. And it's kind of sad because they're like, I know it's there. It's always at the back of my mind. I just don't know what to do with it. Like, do I get rid of it? Do I sell it? I don't know what to do with it. So many of them, like you said, Hall, did an Emrata. They converted it to other pieces of jewelry so they can wear it more often because so many of them did get joy out of that ring. A lot of them have passed it down to their children. So it's either in a jewelry box or with their children. And some of them did say that they sold it to get out of financial debt that the divorce left them in, or they're keeping it as financial security. So a lot of them do see it as a big asset. About 3 or 4 people said they've sold it to fund a holiday. Yes. To create better memories.
A little treat.
And one woman even said that she still wears hers from time to time when she's by herself so other men don't approach her.
Yeah, right.
I have to say, as a massive fan of Facebook Marketplace, I can tell you now there is quite a few diamond solitaire rings for sale on Facebook Marketplace, which I'm presuming were once a token of a relationship status.
Would you believe in the bad juju thing, right? So one of my good mates, after her divorce, she got her ring fashioned into a different kind of ring and she was wearing it on her left hand. But then she decided that actually she needed to let it go. And she wasn't throwing it into the ocean because I think many of us find that a hard notion because it is still worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
But she was like, I cannot wear it anymore. It's definitely going in a box. But does a ring really carry juju? Like, would you buy a wedding ring or an engagement ring that you knew the marriage had ended badly?
I wouldn't, because I think weddings for some reason are always filled with superstitious things. Like, I just feel like it's so high risk to get married. And I don't want to be that person who's like, no, it's fine if he sees me on the day of my wedding. It's fine if he sees the dress. I think that's bad luck. If the marriage doesn't work out, knowing me, my brain will automatically assume it was because
the ring's fault.
I will not blame
Claire
myself.
Murphy, you strike me as a more practical type of person than we buying a
100%.
second-hand ring.
I did not hide my dress from my husband. I didn't hide before walking down an aisle. I didn't even walk down an aisle. I was just there having a gin and tonic with my friends before the celebrant told us we had to go and do the formal part of the wedding.
What?
Yeah.
You're so cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, right, you talk about these superstitions surrounding weddings, and you're right, there are lots of them, but the majority of them are a real patriarchal reflection of the woman needing to belong to the man. And a lot of them are like the engagement ring was a symbol of like a virginity insurance policy at some stage in our past. Also, can we just mark the fact that diamond engagement rings aren't actually anything. They were an idea from a diamond company called De Beers, who one day said, how do we sell more diamond rings to women? I know. Let's make them believe that the diamond ring is a symbol of their everlasting love. And so then men just bought them in droves and got down on one knee, and now we believe it's an integral part of the wedding sort of process. And it's not. A marketing company came up with this, guys, and we fell for it hook, line and sinker. There is no bad juju on a diamond ring. There is a guy in marketing going, great, that bad juju sells me another diamond ring.
Well, that's all true, but speaking for my late mother-in-law, who regular Outlouders will know was a psychic, she said there is no piece of jewellery more infused with like spirit and juju than the rings you wear all the time. Whether they are wedding rings or your mother's ring or just a piece of jewellery that you love, if you wear them all the time, you are in that ring, Claire Murphy. You are freaking in it.
I love that my $29 bargain giant green gem from Mimco is infused with spiritual abilities.
Oh, my God. And can I just say, if a guy was to propose to me and he's listened to this episode and he's like, I'm not getting you an engagement ring because Claire Murphy said it was a marketing scheme. Claire, I am coming for you. I do not care.
Sorry if I've ruined it for everyone.
Outlouders, that is the end of our Wednesday show. Thank you for listening to us as always. Before we go, I need to tell you, because I've literally just got off a plane and I'm looking at my next month of engagements, and I've got a very exciting date coming up.
You do. I've seen photos and I am very excited.
The Out Loud Tour. Remember, Outlouders, you are running out of time to get tickets to the Mamma Mia Out Loud live shows presented by Nivea Cellular. The week before I got on that plane, we were in back-to-back videos where all kinds of crazy things are happening. All kinds of crazy things are happening. The first show is in Brisbane and the next two shows are in Melbourne and Sydney, and they are in May, and there is a link in the show notes to get your tickets. There are a few left and we would love to see you. It's great present for Mother's Day, great night to get your girlfriends together. Go and grab a ticket while you can.
And if you're looking for something else to listen to, on yesterday's episode, Holly, Mia and Jessie revealed some secrets in a special Ask Me Anything. So in depth, Holly, Mia and Jessie revealed the moment they've considered leaving the show. Yes, God forbid. And who Mia would have in her JLo-inspired Zodiac council.
That was very funny.
Here's a little sneak peek.
Okay, if I was making This Is Me now, I would have the following on my Zodiacal council. Brene Brown. She's very wise.
I'm worried that you're going to have all those people.
Glennon Doyle.
Yes, she's going to have all those people. Yeah, she's going to say Oprah next.
Oprah Winfrey.
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Stay with me.
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Oh, I forgot Elizabeth. Liz Gilbert. Okay, good. That's another one.
Oh,
Liz
my
Gilbert.
God,
Okay,
so
so
that's
that's
insufferable council.
A link to that episode will be in the show notes.
Thank you again for listening to us on Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. Thank you to Claire Murphy and to my mate Em Vernem for filling in for Mia and Jessie today. You have been bloody amazing. They will be back on Friday. This episode was produced by Emmeline Gazillis. The assistant producer is Tali Blackman, and there's been audio production by Leah Porges. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Also, well done. You made it through the show with all that jet lag. Congratulations.
I didn't fall asleep. Shout out to any Mamma Mia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamma Mia is the very best way to do it. There's a link in the episode description.